Um, Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the HR webinar series part 2, recruiting and retaining your team with attractive benefits and minimized costs. My name is Alan Brown. I'm serving as your moderator today. Your presenters are Gary Robinson and Ben Greenzweig. Let me see, let me forward to
good enough.
Thanks, Ben. You know, it's a work in progress for me. And like I said, my name is Alan Brown. I am the metropolitan area consultant, coordinator, and business consultant here in the Columbia area. The presenters today, again, are Gary Robinson. He's our business consultant in the South Carolina State region. And Gary Greenzweig, who is our SBDC CARES Act consultant out of the Winthrop region. When we turn the presentation over to them in a few moments, they're going to share some key points about their background. Our session today is as follows. I'll give a brief overview of the SBDC, and then Gary and Ben will take over and dive into today's primary content. The SBDC is an economic development agency network focused on entrepreneur-led economic development. And we do this in all 46 counties across the state of South Carolina through 21 centers that operate through 4 regions: the University of South Carolina region, the South Carolina State region, the Winthrop region, and the Clemson region. And as you look at the screen, you can see the slide. They're depicted in the graphic of the state map that is shown there. Our mission is to advance South Carolina's economic development by helping entrepreneurs grow successful business. Key word in that statement is grow successful businesses, not just start a business to say you're in business, but to grow successful businesses. We do that by focusing on 5 areas: helping small businesses start and launch their business, helping them grow it, grow their sales, helping them retain and hire employees, helping them get access to capital, and also helping them procure government contracts at the local, state, and federal level. And I'll share a little bit more about that in a few moments. Our primary areas of expertise, these are not all, but some of the things that we're most noted for are business planning, fiscal and operations management, tech commercialization of importance, in today's economic environment is cybersecurity, and the focus of this webinar, HR and workforce development strategies. We're hearing from our clients that workforce development is the #1 issue they're having in today's market as they attempt to recover from COVID-19. And so as a way to help provide some guidance, to provide some tools that you could utilize to help address that issue, we created this HR series. As it relates to consulting, we provide no-fee private consultation with subject matter experts in those areas that I mentioned, and we're able to help come alongside you to help you think through the issues that you're having for your business, so that we can help you overcome those hurdles that you're addressing right now to accomplish your overall goals. One of the ways that we do that is through our education, through webinars such as the one that we're having today, and other training opportunities. And those webinars and training opportunities are at no or sometimes low cost. And those webinars can also be found on our website by going to our overall website and following us on our YouTube channel and following us on Facebook. So today's session is being recorded, and you will be able to go back to it by going to our website. And then additional resources. So part of the work that we do is to establish relationships with resource partners in the marketplace that we can connect you with to help you accelerate your business. Some of those resource partners deal in the areas of market research, feasibility studies, tax and accounting, loans and lenders that we have relationship with, and a whole ecosystem of resource partners that an entrepreneur needs to have access to succeed. And so part of our overall goal is to continue to strengthen and develop those relationships, to be able to bring those to you so that you can choose the best relationship that satisfies what you need at that particular time. But don't ask me how we're doing. Ask our clients. As noted here on the screen, is one of our clients here out of the Columbia office. The consultant that worked with this client is Bob Jones. It's Catherine Wilson, who's the owner of Myers Law Firm, and her quote was, "I'm so glad that I took Bob Jones' advice. As my SBDC consultant, his experience, wisdom, and honesty have been very valuable in giving me a much needed confidence boost." Right? Confidence boost to be able to address the issues that she's dealing with as she moves through this COVID-19 pandemic. And so, our motto is ask us, we can help. And so at this point, if you need assistance, feel free to reach out to us. As you see on the screen here, our website address is scsbdc.com. Just go to that website and request counseling if needed. At this time, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Gary, and he's going to carry us forward.
All righty. Good afternoon, everyone. While I get my screen shared here, I will go ahead and let Ben, why don't you go ahead and do a little bit more introduction, and then I'll come in.
Sounds great, Gary. I'm Ben Greenswag. I'm here wearing two hats today. My first hat is an SBDC Cares consultant out of the Winthrop University office, although I do live in the Myrtle Beach area. But the second reason, and probably the more interesting reason for those of you participating today, is that I am a small business owner. And we're going to be talking a lot about ways and opportunities to structure things like your benefits to attract and recruit your talent. And I have lived through all of this. I launched my company, Momentum Events, in 2012. Like all business owners, there is no easy path upward. And so a lot of what Gary's going to be talking about here, I have experienced firsthand. So I'm just here. Many of you are familiar with VOC, voice of the customer. I am here to be the voice of the customer and really try to humanize and personalize the one of the perspectives with this conversation. So Gary, I think you'll be driving, so I'll flip it back to you.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Ben. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about myself this morning. I'm an entrepreneur myself. I have been starting my first business at the age of 18. Bought my first house at 22. I was a government contractor at 27. And I owned a internet company in New Orleans and had a $5 million contract with the city of New Orleans. So I've done a good bit of various things along the way. And I am here and I love what I do. So I'm looking forward to this conversation about human resources and how to get started back in this COVID era and some of the things that have changed since this pandemic has started. So I probably should have asked to have these questions put up, but if you guys would, in the chat box, let me know how many of you guys are sole proprietors. That's one question. And the second question I have for you is, do you have any employees? So I would love to get some feedback from you guys as to where you guys stand in terms of those things. So I want to make sure that we answer your questions given where you are in business. Okay. So I want to start by saying this area of human resources next to accounting to me is probably one of the biggest areas that need to be talked about as it relates to small businesses. And the reason being is because it is an area that is done wrong a lot of times. And not only is it done wrong, but it's one of the things that can put you out of business and put you deep in a financial hole if you get penalized by the various agencies that that monitor labor laws and things like that as it relates to human resources. So it is definitely something that people need to pay attention to. In fact, about I believe it was about 2 or 3 years ago, there was a business in Colombia where the guy had been paying people under the table for a number of years. And when they finally caught up with him, he got penalized $1,800 per employee per payroll for not doing it correctly. And it, of course, put him out of business. So not to scare anyone, but it is a very serious thing that needs to be talked about. So I'm gonna cover real quickly what human resources is. A lot of this you may already know, but I want to go ahead and get you in the frame of mind of what this discussion is going to be about this morning. Okay, so first of all, recruitment. You got to have employees. So your human resource department is typically the one that will go out and find your employees. Once you have those employees, somebody has to manage the performance of those employees. So performance management is a big part of the whole thing. Learning and development. If you are a business and you're looking to really grow and you're looking to scale up, then you're going to want to do things to ensure that your employees have the best knowledge and the best skills to continue to work for you. So with that being said, you may want to be doing things to ensure that they are developing in their skill set. In addition to that, succession planning is another very important part of the human resource cycle. Now, some people might wonder, why is this here? And the reason being is because if you have an owner of a business, and like, for instance, what we just went through with the pandemic, let's say you have a company and they have 10, 15 employees. Those people are working and need to continue working. But let's say the owner of the company gets sick and goes in the hospital for months or dies. What happens to the company after that? Somebody has to take the time to replace that person, that owner or VPs or any other key personnel. Those people need to be replaced, and there needs to be a plan in place to make that happen. And I'm going to be sharing a lot of information during this session. So right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you guys a link. Go
Gary,
ahead.
just to jump in for a minute on that last part, I'm an LLC and a partnership with employees, and my best friend and business partner, who I launched my business with in 2012, did pass away quite tragically and quite quickly from a very rare form of cancer. So I also have lived experiences with a very sudden and abrupt death of a partner, and we did not have a plan in place. So there was a lot of learning on the fly. A lot of things had to happen. We did fortunately have an operating agreement. So for those of you that have partnerships, I cannot emphasize, the importance of having an operating agreement. There are what-if clauses that should be standard boilerplate if you have, an attorney or some assistance to draw that up. But just to echo your comment, Gary, it's another area where I have lived and certainly can share and underline the importance of preparing now.
Yes, I'm glad you added that point, because it's something that typically gets missed sometimes when it comes to business ownership. So I'm glad you had, I'm sorry you had that experience, but I'm glad
I understand the point.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So in the chat box, I included a link to a guide that is on the SBDC website. And I included this guide because it talks about reopening reopening your business and some of the things that you may want to consider. So please take a look at that. And I will be sharing a number of links as it relates to this as we go along. So In addition to that, I'm also going to include a link to a document from the Americas SBDC, which also includes information about succession planning and disaster planning. So these are some things that you should definitely have as part of your business. So please take a look at those two documents. I think you'll find them very useful and helpful as it relates to that. Okay, so in addition to that, in terms of human resources, there's also, of course, the obvious compensation and benefits that need to be covered as a part of human resources. And then there is compliance. When people are hiring employees, the compliance part is the part that nobody really tells you that you need to actually do. Some of you may have QuickBooks as the software that you use for your accounting. And in QuickBooks, they will tell you, hey, we can help you with payroll. Well, QuickBooks helps you to actually calculate the payroll, but they don't tell you about the other compliances that you need to know about as it relates to having employees. So it's very important that you understand the various things that you need to comply with. Okay, and that's a part of your human resources. And then there is risk management. If you have employees get sick, employees get hurt on the job, there are many different things that can cause you to incur risk. If there is a compliance issue, you need to address it, and that's a part of your risk, because there are expenses that come along with if you fail to do something properly when it comes to compliance. So you need to manage those risks, because those are things that can definitely cost you a great deal of money as it relates to running a business. Okay, so let's talk about what are the issues that are associated that small businesses have with human resources. And I'm pretty sure some of you guys have been faced with some of these things. So the first one is employees are expensive. So if you ran a business and you paid people on as contractors, immediately this is going to be a hard case, a hard pill to swallow because of the taxes that have to be paid. Many people who have worked, as an employee don't know that there is an employer side to taxes that has to be paid. So when going into business and you start to employ people, then you start seeing the real cost of having employees, because you're paying both sides of the taxes, which a lot of people don't know about. Then, of course, there's benefits. There's the management of human resources. Then there's the possibility of penalties for non-compliance. So having employees can be a very expensive undertaking, but nonetheless, a very necessary one to undertake, because you really can't scale up a business if you're unwilling to have additional employees. All right. In addition to that, the complexities of payroll calculations. This is not something that is very easy. I have had people come to me and say, well, how much should I set aside for payroll taxes? Don't know that. You have to run the numbers and do the calculations in order to figure it out. There is no just 25% or 30%. There is no easy way of doing it. So you have to go through the process of calculating the taxes. And then, of course, the complexities of managing the compliances. Those are some difficult things for small businesses. And then in addition to that, whatever it is that you're in business for, you're in business to make money selling widgets or whatever it is that you do with your products or services. It is very time consuming to have to do this. And this doesn't actually make you any direct money. So these are the reasons, the main reasons why a lot of small businesses really don't want to get into managing human resources and would love to take care of it some other way. All right. So I'm going to share a number of different avenues in which you can take care of having employees, and Ben, feel free to jump in whenever. So let's talk first about the PEO. A PEO is a professional employer organization. These are firms that are set up to outsource your human resource department, so they can take care of all of the things that I just talked about. So I'm going to share more about how this actually works. And before I do that, let me just share a couple things that you might want to know about it. Originally, it was known as employee leasing. The first time this actually took place was back in the early 60s. And there was no name for it. They just called it, leasing an employee. And over the course of time, a number of laws came about that put more requirements around it, but it was never called an professional employer organization. But in 2014, there were some laws put in place to actually create what is called a certified PEO organization. So the idea of it, although it's not completely new, there are a lot of new changes that have happened in the last 20 years that has created what we know of as being a PEO today. All right.
And Gary, I'm going to jump on in there for everyone. When I launched my company, we originally launched by going with, a large a healthcare broker. Many of you might have experienced, but if you don't know, this is someone whose job it is to shop your company around to a whole bunch of insurance providers and try to get you the best rate possible. This varies state to state. For some of you that might not know, I have employees all throughout the country. If you only have employees here in South Carolina, you could ignore what I'm about to say, but if you have employees outside, insurance is regulated on a state by state level. I cannot buy Blue Cross insurance out of North Carolina if I am in South Carolina. I can only buy Blue Cross insurance in South Carolina for South Carolina. So it is a highly regulated, one of the many reasons why it's very expensive. So I had individual insurance coverage year after year after year until we became informed on what a PEO can do. I won't get there yet, Gary. I'll let you kind of give a little more information. But the journey, if you're currently on an insurance plan and you're not in a PEO, that is the same journey that I was on as well.
All right. So, and in fact, and we're going to discuss a little bit more how this relates to self-employed people real briefly. I'm going to first give you a little bit more information about what it is. With a PEO, it creates what is called a co-employment arrangement. So basically, your employees work for you, the client, as well as for the PEO. So the employees are employed by two different organizations. Now, although we say this is not actually a technical term. Technically speaking, the employees are the employees of the professional employer organization and not your business. But I'm gonna come back to that. So the way it works is there's a service agreement between your business and the PEO, but from that, it then describes what duties each one has, okay? So we'll cover the duties. So as the client, you're going to retain these particular responsibilities. So you're still going to hire your employees. You're still in charge of firing them. You're still in charge of the performance management because the PEO is not there every day. They don't know what your employees do. So it's up to you to really manage the employee at the end of the day. And then, of course, you're going to do on-the-job training for your employee. So you're keeping all the parts that really matter to your actual business. But the non-core part of this, the PEO is now going to pick up. So the PEO will handle doing actual payroll processing. It will take care of all of the benefits administration. It will onboard your employees. So when you hire somebody, you got to go through the process of doing all of the paperwork, the I-9s, the W-4s, collecting all of that information. So the PEO would do all of that, and they will do some initial employment training. So they're going to do the parts of the training they have to do, particularly with HR, letting them know what their rights are as employees, explaining to them any benefits that they have. So they will cover all of the pieces in their orientation they have to do with the parts that the PEO handles. But once they're done there, then you, the business owner, would then do your job training with your actual employee.
Yeah, Gary, just to jump in as well now, and that's okay. The way that I like, the way I was taught this and what I would recommend for those that are paying attention, a PEO is like a homeowners association, right? You don't have to worry about taking care of, the communal lawn or getting the garbage pickup, but you still got to take care of your house, right? They just make sure that everything around it works and works right, that your property, not your property taxes, but the community taxes are taken care of, that your entryway is paved when it needs to get paved. So just in terms of thinking it, maybe if this is a bit of a foreign idea, that's the way that I usually tend to think about it.
Absolutely. Great way to look at it. So then there's also the risk management part of this. And again, the idea behind the PEO is they're taking all of the work that you really don't want to do and leaving you with the things that you really want to do. So risk management is not one of those things you don't want to spend time having to deal with complaints and compliance and unemployment. You don't want to have to deal with that. So that's what the PEO does for you. And then, of course, there's workers' compensation, which they also provide to you and your employees. So there are a lot of great benefits. So I'm going to break this down a little bit further than this. Okay. So here is a more detailed understanding of PEO services. So with payroll processing, they're going to do all the withholdings, the deductions, the garnishments. They're going to make the payments. They're going to provide you with all the vacation pay and keeping track of all those things and providing the employee with their pay stub. Okay, now just so we're clear, because I don't want to make sure that nobody mistakes this, the PEO is not paying your payroll. Okay, you still have to pay for your payroll and pay for all of these things. They're just handling, managing, making sure that the things happen, but they're not paying for it for you. So you still will pay the PEO for all of these services for your employees. Okay. Then there's the human resource management. So when you get ready to hire somebody, they'll get with you, go over a job description. When you hire somebody, they'll go through and making sure that they cover all of the various things that need to be covered in terms of hiring somebody and making sure that there's an employee handbook. And I'll make mention of one thing about the employee handbook. Because this is considered co-employment, your employees would get two handbooks. So they'll get a handbook from the PEO, but you, the business owner, still need to have a handbook for your employees. But typically when you go into something like this, your PEO provider will help you with developing a handbook for it for your side as well. So those are some of the things from the human resource side. And then again, as I mentioned, the risk management part, there are so many different compliances that have to be covered. And these things can change rather rapidly. And particularly now with the pandemic coming through, there have been a lot of changes in human resources and labor laws. So these are things you want somebody who's a professional who can keep up with how things need to be, how things need to go. And I will share some tips and share with you some things, real life instances at the end of this to help you understand what that means. And then of course, there is workers' compensation. You got to have the insurance. Somebody's got to handle any claims that come from that, and also manage the premiums. Now, the premiums is a part, if you've ever done this yourself and you've had employees, if you have a secretary and then you have someone who does some physical labor, the amount of money that you're supposed to pay in terms of the premium for workers' comp is different based upon the job title. So you can get yourself in trouble again if you are paying workers' compensation for everybody on the same level when they actually have different job responsibilities. So you need someone who can manage the workers' compensation part of the business. All right. Now, just to be fair, there are different ways of handling your human resources. So these are three different opportunities that you have. So the PEO is the one that I mainly talk about, but I will definitely share with you the other two. So I'm going to start with the ASO, the Administrative Service Organization. All three of these are very similar organizations, but there are some differences. Okay, so the main thing to know about an ASO is they're not actually owning any of the work as it relates to the employees. So the benefits package is not theirs. They're merely administrating what you already have. So your employees would stay your employees in this situation, and they're merely coming in as contractors to manage your system, okay? And basically you can have them manage as little or as much as you want to. So you can do this one on an a la carte basis. So if you just want them to do workers' compensation, you can do it that way. Or you can have them do more than that. Now, they can provide HR support, but mainly they are only providing HR support to managers. They're not dealing directly with your employees. So there are some major differences and major limitations to the ASO. All right, so then there's the HRO. The HRO is kind of the middle range between these. The HRO does provide a comprehensive set of HR services, but again, it's an outsourced situation. They're providing support to your HR department that you have. So they're not taking over anything, and again, the employees stay yours. Now, the good thing in the concept of the HRO, they do provide support to both managers and employees. But in the case of the PEO does all of that. So whatever you see in the ASO and the HRO, the PEO does all of it, but they do it as a part of their business. So everything is moving over to the PEO. All right. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the pros and cons of doing this. And let me take one step back to mention this. If you are a sole proprietor, using a PEO is a great thing to do. Now, if you look up the laws as it relates to how you're supposed to be taxed as a sole proprietor, the IRS says that you have to be taxed as a self-employed individual. So you have to pay self-employment taxes, okay? But if you don't want to have to do the work, and this is where a lot of people get in trouble, they don't know that they have to do that work. If you don't want to have to go through that, you can use a PEO. And the benefit there is you would be an employee under a PEO. So if for some reason your business goes out of business, you can go to the unemployment line because you will be paying into the unemployment system. Whereas if you pay self-employment taxes, you cannot. Okay. And again, the other benefit is when you go to a PEO, they have benefits, and their benefits are spread across the number of clients that they have. So they can get a cheaper rate than if you go and you try to get it on your own. So there are a lot of benefits as a small business with 1 to 10 employees for you to use a PEO to do this.
Hey, Gary, this is Alan. So you said a lot, and this is very interesting. I got a question I want to ask, and Ben, please jump in response to this question. So as a small business owner, I see that having an ASO or HRO and PEO, and being aware of those entities, how they operate, can really be beneficial as I'm scaling my company. And I'm looking at ways to outsource those compliance issues, particularly related to payroll. During COVID, bless you, Ben. During COVID, one of the things that we saw from a lot of small business owners is that they didn't have the documentation to really benefit from the different the different stimulus programs that the federal government's offering. Right? They couldn't document employee pay, or they were legitimately had employees, but they still had them as 1099, and all they were paying them like they were full-time employees. And so what I'm hearing that something like the 3 entities that you just mentioned could have really helped small businesses provide better infrastructure for the way that they manage their business, so that they can not only take advantage of the stimulus programs, but better position them for growth. Is that, from a benefit perspective, is that something I hear you're saying, and has that been your experience?
So I will say that being with a PEO certainly has helped, but it would be unfair for me to not say that there were some challenges with PEOs, specifically during COVID when it came to PPP, applying for PPP, and then of course applying for forgiveness. Now, I don't anticipate, God willing, this being an issue for the foreseeable future, but the challenge is that when there is a tax form you need to file, and correct me if I'm wrong, Gary, I think it's a 970. And a 970 is when you have employees, you have to report their wages. Now, this was a key document that you needed to get your PPP loan, as well as your
940 and 990.
940. All right. Well, I was in the nines. I was close enough. Thanks. This document is not available if you are part of a PEO, because technically your taxes are filed under the EIN, the federal number of the PEO. It's how you get the great buying power. You're one of 5,000, 50,000, 80,000 small businesses, and you can get really competitive rates. Again, major plus for it. So what happened was you needed a special letter. And in my case, you actually had to spend a lot of time educating your lender on why you don't have these forms. Now, that was a completely unintended consequence, certainly when I joined a PEO a few years ago. So while there certainly are, and listen, I don't have any investment stake in a PEO in any way, shape, or form. I just know it's been a great decision for me and my employees to keep them here, to get all that nonsense off my plate. If there's only one thing I hate more than HR, it's accounting. So, Gary, you nailed it. And I don't have to do any of that. But you should be aware there might be cases at some point down the road where you might have to work a little bit in extenuating circumstances. So want to put a little splash of reality into that COVID situation.
And I will piggyback on that. So here's the issue, as I mentioned before, when you use a PEO, technically the employees are no longer your employees. They are the employees for tax purposes. They are the employees of the PEO. But here's the caveat to that. It's just like what Ben said. You can call the PEO and have them address that issue to ensure that you get the correct documentation, because they can give you all of the forms that you need in order to submit, along with the letter to say that these are PEO clients. So you can do it, but it is difficult, and you have to work with the PEO in order to make sure that you can get the right documentation. But with that being said, at least you will have the right documentations versus you having nothing. So it's definitely better to have someone who could do it, because there are a lot of people, again, didn't have any of the documentation because they didn't know how to create those documents.
So Ben, contrast that in comparison to having 1099 contract employees at that same point. Are there benefits in comparison to that? Because that's typically where we are, right? If we're 5 to 10 employees, and this is where we're starting out as a small business owner, as Gary mentioned, the complications around employees is high, the complexity is high, so we tend not to do that, and we just have them as 1099 contracts,
So to your point, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, Alan. We have both, right? We have 1099s and we have full timers, right? So we have seen both sides of that coin. To me, if you in early stages of launching your business, for what it's worth, if you can launch with 1099s, my advice as a small business owner, entrepreneur, would be launch with 1099s. Okay, it makes your business more scalable. It allows you to be able to hire quickly, scale up or scale down. Now, the flip side is 1099s, and I have a lot of friends that are 1099s, contractors. They are never as engaged as a full-timer because you are a contract with them. That doesn't mean they don't do good work. It doesn't mean that you all love them. It doesn't mean that you all won't work together for 30 years. But if you are a full-time employee, you love the company, you love what you do, there is a culture, there is a whole other element to it. And if you're launching a business, you're going to want to establish that culture. So that is a major benefit of launching with full-timers. On the flip side, the scalability, the up and the down, that is where the 1099s help, and they're cheaper. There is no payroll tax. There are no benefit costs as well. And the final variable for you to consider in the climate we're in right now is you might not be able to compete for 1099 talent. You might need to offer benefits as the cost of doing business, depending on what the market looks like. So great question, Alan. And, every business is different, but that's just my own experience out there.
Thank you.
I will add to this, and I think that when people want to work with contractors, there are rules that go along with having contractors. So if you have contractors or you're thinking about having them, you should definitely go to the IRS website and look up what are the rules. And a lot of times people do violate these rules. So just to give you an example, you cannot control the time of a contractor. So you can't tell them they got to be in at 8 o'clock and get off at 5 o'clock. You can't do that.
Exactly right.
They cannot wear a uniform because then they're your employee if they're wearing the uniform. So there are a number of, and you can't tell them that they can't work for other people. So there are a number of rules that go along with having contractors. So it is very important that a person checks to make sure they are not violating those particular rules. All right.
That's a really good point.
Okay. All right. So some things to consider, pros and cons. So here are the great things about the PEO. You no longer have to deal with HR issues directly because they're going to take care of that for you. You're going to get better rates for benefits. And the reason being, it's sort of like operating in the cloud. They have mass numbers, so thus they can get better rates than if you go by yourself. In addition to that.
Sorry, Gary. I know you kind of went over that. I cannot, I got to put a big old stop sign in a good way. I cannot emphasize the savings that you get, better rates for benefits. I mean, that to me should be the biggest, huge font size flashing out there. In many cases, you're competing, with other when you're trying to get healthcare, you're one of 3 employees, 5 employees, 2 employees. When you go with a PEO, you're one company of 80,000 companies, 15,000 companies, and that's how insurance companies drive down rates. That's the math behind insurance costs right there. They want a lot of people on insurance not using it. That is a very simple calculation on how insurance rates. So the more people you have, the same percentage of people won't use it, the lower your rates are. I gotta flash that one before you continue, Gary. That's to me a huge. We saved enough money to go to our PEO that it basically paid for me and my senior leadership team what we were paying in our premiums for our own insurance. So the same money we were paying anyway, we saved and were able to use that to give better health care to our employees.
And it should also go to, we should also mention in this pandemic era, when you have to be competitive when trying to hire people, having benefits is a major plus. If they can get paid the same amount and get benefits somewhere else, I guarantee you they're going to the somewhere else. So having that is a major part of utilizing a PEO. And it's part of the reason why we're discussing it now is because this is a great way of relaunching and getting employees back to work. All right, and in addition to that, less time spent on these HR functions that most of you guys don't want to do. All right, and then again, the reduction of overall expenses. There have been numerous studies on PEOs that have shown that there is less turnover. Your employees are typically happier and more productive when a company is using a PEO, because it's like working for a big Fortune 500 company. You get all of the same benefits and you can still remain a small business. All right, so and again, the PEO shares in the liability of the legal compliance. Now, because there are still some things HR wise that you will still have to maintain, there are some legal compliances you still have to do. Like, for instance, if you have a building and people come to work, there's a labor sign that you have to put up in your building. Well, that would be your responsibility for making sure that that sign is in your building. So there are still some things you have to deal with, but most of the liability is on the side of the PEO. All right, and then you have greater flexibility in payment terms. If you go out and you try to get workers' compensation just by yourself on your own with your business, they're going to ask you to pay a deposit, and they're going to probably want the first year upfront for the workers' compensation. But when you're working with a PEO, a lot of times they either provide you with a fixed rate, or they can also provide you with a pay-as-you-go type of model. So you're paying workers' compensation with every payroll versus having to pay for it upfront.
And in my experience, your cost of workers' comp is significantly lower with a PEO than on your own as well. I think we saved 30% on our premium when we went to our PEO. So that's just another mass buy. It's the Costco, BJ, Sam's Club approach towards your benefits.
Absolutely, absolutely. So some of the cons, I'm going to say most of the cons are really ego driven. So because there's some things that definitely changed. So technically you no longer have an employees, including yourself. Okay. When you're working with the PEO, everyone in the company has to be on the PEO salary, on the PEO's payroll. And that includes you as the owner. So you do not technically, on paper, legally and tax wise, you don't work for your business anymore.
Unless, just to be clear, unless you are an LLC in a partnership where you file a K-1 and you are not a W-2 employee, you can do an owner's draw. Through most PEOs set up an owner's draw, which you can get, and then you handle your taxes, you know, through your LLC and your partnership returns. So that part won't change. If you are an LLC and you are a partnership, and you take an owner's draw or a guaranteed payment, depending on how your accountant or qualifies it, you don't then become an employee, because that would be against the legal framework of being an LLC partnership.
Gotcha. Yep, absolutely. All right, so employees will no longer receive a check from your business. Okay, and sometimes that can be confusing for people because they're getting a check from somewhere else. But that is another one of those things that people want to see that name on the check. So but again, more ego than anything. And then the PEO determines what benefits are offered to you and your employees. So although the PEO may provide you with some options, they're the ones that are actually providing that benefit. So thus they're the ones that get it set up. So you're going to be going into whatever they already have set up. So you won't be able to go in and decide that you want to go with Aetna when they're with Blue Cross Blue Shield. So you're going to have to go with whatever they give you in terms of those types of benefits. So there is some lack of control that you lose when it comes to the benefits package. Now, that's not with everything. There are a lot of benefits that you can still put into your plan that have to do with you only. But for the bigger things like the insurances, then you're going with whatever carrier the PEO is using.
And if I could just jump on that, by the way, in my experience, the benefits that you have access to offer your employees are significantly more in a PEO environment than if you would buy them individually. For example, I'm part of a very large PEO, and we can provide our employees at little to virtually no cost to us as the employer, telemedicine, telepsychiatric care, gym reimbursements, life insurance, IRA. These are all things that we can all leverage within the framework of the PEO. And what's great, going back to Gary's first comment, I don't have to worry about a contract with an IRA provider. I don't have to worry about a contract with a gym membership. It's all bundled in the same location. So I know you have that as a con, Gary. Again, I've lived this myself. I would actually probably put that more as a pro or at least a neutral, but I understand why you put it there.
No, I completely agree with you. For me, I know I would see that as a plus, not having to handle that.
Yep. And again, to be clear, for those of you paying attention, you don't need to offer, just because your PEO has 19 different benefit packages you can offer outside of health insurance, you're not forced to offer any of that either. It's just available for you. So something else to put there too.
All right. Okay. All right. So we're running out of time, so I'm gonna speed up a little bit. So why use a PEO for post-COVID? Some PEOs offer recruitment, and that's a good thing because you don't want to spend time having to do that. So you definitely want to look at having someone who can put you out there on the various platforms and help you to do recruitment, and always have that door open. So if you need to replace somebody, you have a ready-made system for how you can recruit new people. Again, as I mentioned before, PEO benefits make it more attractive to potential employees. You also have these experts that are helping you to better position your business to help you find those particular clients, because you really have to be more competitive in this day and time. It improves your operational organization. If you have these things set up, whereas you was writing a check on Friday afternoons to employees, but now they're getting a pay stub, completely different way of thinking, and your employees will see your organization is a lot more professional because there's this particular part of your organization is run very smoothly. It also helps you to optimize your staff because the PEO and their exports are going to constantly be sharing with you how to get more out of your employees, depending on which PEO you go with. But if you have a good one that's very hands-on, they will help you to figure out ways in which you can optimize your staff. They also keep you compliant with fast changing government responses. There have been things that have changed in the last month. And so those are the things that the PEO is going to stay on top of and make sure that you're doing things correctly. And it
If I
helps
could
to,
also add, oh, I'm sorry, Gary. If I could add to that as well, it allows your employees to go to the PEO for things like their tax forms, their own wages, their deductions. You know, I used to hate it when someone say, "Oh, can you please change my withholding from a 4 to a 3 or I don't want to do that. I want to run my business. This way they can go online, they'll have their own profile, they could log in, they could just change their deductions right then and there. It just removes, again, when you're running a business, your time is more valuable than the money you're bringing in the door. And to me, that was the calculus that I had used as well.
absolutely, absolutely. So before I go on, I'm going to go into the chat room and I'm going to drop a link. What I'm giving you the link to is the PDF list of all the PEOs that are registered in the state of South Carolina. So if you're interested in a PEO, that's a good list. Now, do note on that list, there are a lot of companies that are nationwide. So you definitely want to look at where they're located. So if you want someone who's local, you'll see the ones that are based locally versus the ones that are nationwide. All right. Okay, so next we're going to jump into temporary staffing. So temporary staffing is another way to go about taking care of your employment needs. We're going to breeze through this. Temporary staffing is very similar to PEOs. There's not a whole lot of difference in it, but I will explain a little bit about how they're different. So with the temporary staffing company, a person can only work for a temporary staffing company for a year before they have to come off the rolls of a staffing company. So this is not meant to be a permanent situation. And this is truly what employee leasing is really like. And the reason being is because the staffing company is the employer and they're basically loaning that employee to a client business. So if you decide to use a temporary staffing company, the temporary staffing company is going to go out, they're going to recruit people, and then they'll give you somebody who meets your requirements. So it is a fairly easy way of getting new employees if you are looking for someone. And the good thing about using the temporary staffing company is they want you to take that person full time. So the person can come in and it gives you an opportunity for you to evaluate whether or not you want this person. And you can always send them back to the temporary staffing company if things don't work out. So they have the staffing agency has a contract with you, the client. They also have an employment contract with the temporary employee. And that basically spells out the arrangement between, in terms of labor laws and all of those things, that is between the staffing company and the temporary employee. The client company does not play any role in those particular things because this temporary employee is not their employee. In fact, they are a contractor to that to your business. If you use a temporary employee, they are merely a contractor, but you're not paying them directly. You're paying the staffing company. All right. So now let's talk about some other very quick ideas that you can use if you're having problems finding people to work. SC Works has some great programs out there that you definitely want to look into. They have some on-the-job training programs that allows you to basically get reimbursed for between 50 and 75% of the cost for you training an employee. And this is very similar to the temporary staffing from the standpoint that you get to evaluate whether or not you want to keep this person on the books. And if not, you can always get someone else. But the state will provide you with a 50 to 75% coverage of the cost of you training that person to evaluate them in the first place. So this is one program, but they have quite a few different programs that you may want to look into. So I'm going to put in the chat box another link, and I'm going to put in a link to the SC Works website and what they have to offer. So just to go through it real briefly, they have they have a registered apprenticeship program, which is mainly what I was talking about with the on-the-job training. With this one, they do provide you with a tax credit, a direct tax credit. And actually, during the next session, definitely sign up and register for the next HR webinar, because Alan will be covering a lot more when it comes to employment and tax credits. But this particular program, the way they compensate you is through a tax credit. So it's a very good tax credit at that. It's $1,000 per person that you train. And again, it is a direct tax credit, okay? In addition to that, they have educational and training classes to help train your employees, people that you're looking to bring on. Now, they do their programs. They have a lot of programs that have to do with disability, with re-entry programs. So if you don't mind taking on a little bit of risk with dealing with people who may have some disabilities, or someone coming straight from the prison system, this is a great opportunity for them to get back into the work world, but at the same time for you to get a potential employee that you can keep for the long haul. So great programs that the state offers with that. And then there is, they have a number of other employment programs. So definitely go to their website and you'll see what they have. Almost done, almost done. All right, so finding new employees. Here are those tips that I was telling you about. Evaluate your hiring criteria. A lot of times people put on their job descriptions that someone needs a college degree in order to work. You may want to double check that to make sure, is that the truth? Do you really need that college degree? So you may want to find ways that you can make it easier for you to get more applicants for a particular job. And you want to make sure
Gary,
that you,
oh, sorry, I didn't mean to step on you there. I was going to say that in my company, we do not require a college degree. Again, we work in events, media, conferences, content. We do not require a college degree. We hire for personality and how someone interviews.
and that's a good thing. And it really does open the door for you to get more applicants. So taking a look at how you do that is a great way of getting more applicants. And again, as I mentioned before, being competitive, you got to really think about the fact that it is getting harder in this job market to find employees. So you need to think of it in terms of, how can I compete for these employees? Expand your search. Go put it out there on different platforms. Do more than what you were doing before. And I guarantee you there are many different avenues in which you could look for an employee. But the good thing, again, if you're using a PEO or some of these other types of organizations, you may not have to worry about that. But if you're doing it yourself, you may want to consider having your information on multiple platforms. Use inclusive language, okay? So sometimes just the way that you have your job description worded can eliminate people. You can make it so that people don't want the job simply because of how you're describing it in your language. So give you a good example, saying that someone needs to move furniture versus they need to be able to lift furniture. You know, a person can use a dolly to move furniture, but if you're telling them they have to lift it, then it's going to eliminate people who may not feel like they can lift that type of those types of items. So you may want to change the wording that you use in your recruiting. And of course, there are a lot of people who are still concerned with COVID. So you may want to highlight how you're taking safety measures to ensure the safety of your employees. So all those are great ways of kind of setting yourself apart and making it so that you're more attractive as an employer. Okay, last slide, or almost last, well, just about for me. The do's and don'ts in the COVID era. You cannot pre-screen your candidates for COVID before making a conditional job offer. You can't take their temperature. That's a medical exam. You cannot ask them if they have been in contact with somebody from COVID. You really cannot ask them any questions before hiring them about COVID. That's a very important point that some people can completely miss, that you can't ask those types of questions. And you cannot ask any medical questions. Now that one might be a fairly standard question, but just know that most things as it relates to COVID would be considered medical. So you want to stay away from any questions like that. And you don't want to ask them about risk factors, you know, about obesity, about high blood pressure, nothing of those of that magnitude. And you cannot unilaterally postpone the start date or withdraw a job offering because the individual is high risk. So either you may have noticed something, maybe they told you something, but you cannot make those types of decisions based upon your perception that they may be high risk. That is discriminatory and you cannot do that. All right. Now, here's what you can do. Most hiring paperwork can be completed remotely using digital methods. There are a few things that you do need to do physically, but most of the paperwork can be done using some form of electronic signature. So, and you can do interviews via video conference. So there are a lot of things that will make it easier for you to hire employees. So that is all that I have for you. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Ben, you got any last words?
No, all I'll say is that's a long list of PEOs here. I would recommend reaching out, you know, to Gary or myself or others to just try to get some recommendations. There are going to be a lot of different ones that are out there. But, you know, PEOs, they can really help you become competitive in hiring and retaining your employees. There are still a lot of businesses that do not offer them. And listen, labor market is tight, and it will probably be tight for a little while longer. So other than that, do your homework, but remember your time certainly when you're starting out, probably even forever, is as valuable, if not more, than your cash flow. So use it wisely. And that's all I got to say.
Thank you, Ben. This was wonderful.
Awesome. Thank you,
Thank
Ben
you,
and
Gary.
Gary. Thank you, Ben and Gary, for sharing your knowledge today in reference to PEOs, staffing companies, OJTs, and just really how to help small business owners address the workforce shortage that currently exists and retaining employees, you know, while recruiting them, you know, and providing some opportunity for them to grow. You know, Ben, you mentioned three things that kind of really stood out and relates to PEOs. Gary, you mentioned them as well. You know, but really flexibility, cost reduction, and the ability to maintain competitiveness as it relates to the labor market. Carolyn, are there any questions in the chat that we need to address? If I know we're just beyond 1 o'clock, we're 9 minutes beyond. So don't want to belabor the webinar, but are there any questions there?
No, sir, I don't see any questions.
Awesome, awesome. Well, seeing that there are no questions and we're beyond 1 o'clock time frame, just want to thank everybody for attending. You know, also want to let you know that all attendees will receive a post-event survey. We appreciate your feedback because it does help us prepare for future webinars. You know, in response to your survey, you'll get a copy of the slide deck. And as mentioned, the seminar webinar has been recorded and the video will be posted to the website. Today's session is the second part of a 4-part series. The remaining sessions are listed on the slide deck. Please go to our website and register for the remaining 2 sessions. If there are any questions, you can email myself or any of the others mentioned in today's presentation, and we'll be glad to assist you. You can go to our state website, www.SC SBDC.com, and find out more about us. barring any other questions, thank you for your time today, and keep calm and small business on, and we'll see you on the other side. Have a great day,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone. Bye now. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Alan.